Good day, everyone. On behalf of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, let me welcome you to the Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance webinar on using body-worn camera footage for training purposes. My name is Chip Coldren. I'm the Director of the Center for Justice Research and Innovation at the CNA Institute for Public Research, the Director of Technical Assistance for the Bureau of Justice Assistance's Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance Program, and I'll provide a brief introduction for today's webinar. Today's webinar focuses on the important topic of using footage from body-worn cameras for training purposes. Maybe at this point in our experience with the implementation of body-worn cameras, it almost goes without saying that body-worn camera footage can and should be integrated into police officer training in several ways. In recruit training, in refresher training, in training regarding specific officer-civilian encounters, and for remedial training purposes. And I would also suggest for public education purposes. Today's webinar revisits this issue and provides information about the innovative work in two agencies that have made some interesting strides in this area. The technical assistance team members and site representatives we'll hear from today include Captain Kevin Lutz from the Camden County, New Jersey Police Department. Captain Lutz is a subject matter expert in use of force, defensive tactics, and de-escalation. He's also a co-creator of the Police Executive Research Forum's ICAT, Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics, training guide for defusing critical incidents. Welcome, Captain. We also have Commander Dane Sorensen from the Tempe, Arizona Police Department. Commander Sorensen has 20 years of law enforcement experience. He has served as the Training Unit Special Events and Patrol Lieutenant, as well as a sergeant in Gangs and Patrol. He's also served on the action team and on the bike unit. And let's commend him for receiving a life-saving award in 2012 for resuscitating a drowning victim. And he received a Meritorious Service Award in 2020 for his service on the de-escalation project and other department training initiatives. Commander, thank you for joining us as well. And we have Dr. Michael White from Arizona State University. Mike is our co-director for the Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance Program, and as many of you know, has involved in research and implementation issues around body-worn cameras for the better part of 8 or 10 years. So good to see you, Mike. Thank you. Following these presentations, John Markovic, our body-worn camera program director at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, will provide some comments as well. And I just want to thank each of these individuals for sharing their time and experiences with us and for working with us on putting this webinar together. This is one in a series of webinars sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Assistance and coordinated by CNA for the Body-Worn Camera Technical Assistance Program. We thank the Bureau of Justice Assistance for its investment in the Body-Worn Camera Program, in the Body-Worn Camera Toolkit, and in a range of technical assistance resources and opportunities for agencies implementing body-worn cameras. The Bureau supports state, county, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies in many, many ways. We are grateful that they do. I'm now going to hand the presentation off to Captain Lutz at Camden. Captain?
Thank you, Chip, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to give a brief history of our police department, just kind of how we got to where we are today, and I'll briefly discuss the role that body-worn camera and training played in our cultural transformation. In 2013, the Camden County Police Department was formed, and we took over policing within the city of Camden, which was previously policed by the Camden City Police Department. And at that time, there was many cultural issues within the previous department, which I was a part of. We did not have body-worn cameras at that time. And shortly after our transition, we equipped everyone within the agency with body-worn cameras. And again, then Chief Thompson, we were looking to have a cultural shift in the agency, and the selection of the officers assigned to our training unit and ultimately how we use body-worn cameras played a huge part in the transition that we had. From the onset, we always looked at the footage as game film. And we're constantly refining to this day how we review, how we ultimately deliver remedial training to the officers within our department when deficiencies are found, when perhaps there's a use of force where de-escalation was not used. And I think that constant self-evaluation has helped us get to where we are today in the use of the cameras themselves. We have a very robust process in place for how I'm going to start with use of force. Every use of force is reviewed in real time by the immediate supervisor. Those reviews are conducted in line with our training policy and procedure. And when I say that, very importantly, for those of you who aren't familiar, we helped create within our agency and ultimately train all of our officers in the ICAT training module, which is, for lack of a better term, what we believe to be the best de-escalation training that's out there. And what we did was incorporate all aspects of not only that training program, but our policies and procedures into that initial review. And in the event that an officer does something, perhaps the use of force was justified and legal, but perhaps there was a better way to handle it, we're immediately kicking that review process over to our training unit for within 24 hours, a real-time review of that incident. And once that's completed, and again, we're trying to do this in pretty short order to correct behavior, we're bringing the officers into our virtuous simulator. For those of you who aren't familiar with the virtuous simulator, it is a 300-degree wraparound, for lack of a better term, stage. And it's as real life as we can get with the officers. And what we found in conjunction with that good solid classroom training is to support that with the practical application. And this simulator allows us to do that. So once our training staff has reviewed the incident, they break it down. We bring the officers into this virtual simulator and we're able to put their body-worn camera footage up directly in front of them. And we walk them through the entire incident. On this stage, there's 8 screens. To one screen, we have our use of force policy. And on the other screen, we have our critical decision-making model. And while the officers are receiving that training, we're constantly reinforcing both of those concepts, and they go hand in hand. We found it to be very effective. The challenges that we've had over the years have been how the officers receive that training. We want them to come in, we're trying to shape outcomes and correct behavior and reinforce certain aspects of our policies and procedures. And we don't want them to, when they come in, think that the training that they're receiving is punishment. We want it to be received in a positive manner. And I think through a series of adjustments that we've made, through the quality of the instructors that we put in front of the officers, we've seen really tremendous results. Majority of the officers that we have in uniform, as is the case as you look across the country, they're becoming younger and younger. So reinforcing this type of behavior from the onset, and this all starts at the academy, vitally important. Putting that body-worn camera on them while they're at the academy, getting them used to the fact that everything they're going to be doing is going to be recorded, it's going to be archived, is an important concept to reinforce at the onset of their career. And ultimately that the use of the cameras is going to be for their best interest. And again, when that policy, procedure, and everything comes in line with one another, we found it to be very effective. In the review of the videos, we've gone to great lengths to ensure that the videos that we're reviewing and we're showing to the officers, it's not only the ones where we might find deficient behavior, that we're recognizing the officers for their positive behavior. And we've seen time and time again, tremendous videos that not only show de-escalation, but they reinforce several components from within our policy and procedure, which is the duty to intervene. Certain aspects of the duty to intervene was always taboo, especially for those of us within my department that came up under our previous department, stepping in and stopping an officer from doing something inappropriate, from using perhaps too much force, from not de-escalating, from, we teach them to recognize that when their emotions are high, rational thinking is low, and we're going to support them when they step in, they intervene in a certain situation. That has to come from the top down. And quite honestly, if we didn't have those type of positive outcomes captured on video, I don't believe we would be where we are culturally today. It's been a very important part of the process. And again, everything goes hand in hand with what are supporting policy with good training and constant reinforcement. Talking about ICAT training and how the cameras and how this video plays into that, there is a tremendous amount of that training is looking at other body-worn camera footage from different incidents that have taken place across the country. They're often lawful shootings. They're often lawful uses of force. We like to refer to them within this training as lawful but awful. And those are the types of incidents that we're trying to avoid. And I think through that constant and that positive reinforcement, you're going to see the outcomes and the cultural shift that you're seeking. I do have a video that I would like to show that I think really captures the manner in which we deliver training to our officers and these positive outcomes. This is an officer, he's our head field training officer. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen if that's okay with you, Chip. Language is a little bit tense, but what I think you're gonna see here is a very positive outcome. That's it. Now, some terse language there, but I think this is a case in point of an intervention that took place that saved an officer's career. We discovered this through an independent BWC review. There's no discipline on the officer that reached into that vehicle and was about to make a really bad decision. But we think this is a great example of a positive outcome of the training we've delivered and how body-worn camera plays into that. We would not have seen this or known about this had we not had that footage. And this particular incident is highlighted within the ICAT training curriculum as we believe, as a shining example of what we want our officers to do, and that has to be supported from the top down. Chip, that concludes the presentation portion that I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. I see we have a question from the floor here. Quinn, you want to take care of that?
Yeah. So the question coming in, Captain Lutz, who does your independent review?
So when we conduct our use of force, the initial review is done by the sergeant, and if any initial issues are identified, they're passing that information on to the watch commander. We have a lieutenant who serves as the watch commander that's on 24 hours a day. And within roughly an hour or two, the lieutenant is conducting a review of that use of force incident. In the event that they find any issues, any training issues, if there was something that they believe to be a violation of policy or procedure, then it's either kicked at that point to internal affairs or to our training unit, which are separate functions that work hand in hand with one another. When training issues are identified either through a complaint to internal affairs or whatnot, that is also kicked to our training unit. And we have some very experienced officers. I can't overstate the importance of having the right people assigned to training. It was not a priority when we worked for the Camden City Police Department, and it's been a priority of every chief to ensure that the people who are delivering a message of change and a shifting culture, they have to be the ones that everybody relies on. We also have civilians that are assigned to our internal affairs unit, typically retired police officers. We have a retired trooper that works in there now. That is that first layer of review. And again, how that remedial training is delivered is most important. We need to make sure that that review is neutral, right? That there's not any bias in the decision. And that's where the critical decision-making model is really the foundation of how we expect our officers to make decisions. And when they're making the appropriate decisions and that model is followed appropriately, then we move on. But often, like I said, there could be a use of force that is lawful, but they could have done things a little bit better. That's where the game film comes in, and we bring them in to conduct that review.
Great, thank you. It does seem like the audio came in a bit choppy on that example video that you showed. So would you just be able to provide us with a quick summary of that incident, please?
Sure. It was a domestic violence incident where the party that was placed under arrest was extremely irate, and he was doing everything that he could to get the officer to react to what he was saying. We train our officers to avoid conflict in those types of situations. Once the handcuffs are on, that incident, in essence, is over. And the worst you would see in that particular incident was once he was put in the car, maybe a destruction of property, perhaps he kicks the window out, but we can get that window replaced. What happened was he started to kick the window after he was put in the back of the car, a lot of back and forth along the way. He goes in, he opens the back door of the car, reaches in, and clearly was about to do something inappropriate. The head training officer steps in, pulls him out of the car, tells him to go cool off. It's really a great video that we're proud of.
Thank you. Another question came in. It's a three-parter. So first, how many uses of force do you have in a day? Second, are they established by different levels of severity? And then third, have you purchased or enrolled in any third-party review?
I'll answer the part first. We do not have any independent review beyond our in-house process of immediate supervisor, the lieutenant, then internal affairs, and then we also have our training unit. So we do not have an independent civilian review board or anything of that nature here. How many uses of force do we have in a day? Obviously that varies. We could go a week without having one, or we could have a handful in a day. I can tell you that our numbers are way down. When our officers use force, it is typically a takedown to the ground and hands put behind the back. Rarely do we see punches and kicks. In a city like Camden, that at one point, not all that long ago, was considered the most dangerous in the nation, our officers exercise a tremendous amount of restraint, and we're very proud of the efforts that they put in every day. It's a very difficult climate to work in. We're getting in quick pursuits on a regular basis, and often these pursuits end in a non-use of force, which is non-existent in years past. And one statistic that really stands out is at the formation of our department, we used to average many excessive force complaints, as many as 65 or 70 a year. As of 2 years ago, 3 in 1 year. The next year was 5. So there's been a tremendous reduction, not only in use of force, but complaints, and we continue to drive crime rates down. Last year was a 50-year low for us in the city. So, we're proud that the officers are doing things the way they are, but it's not easy. And levels of severity, I think I explained that we have not had a police involved shooting in, I believe, 4.5 years now. We used to have a handful a year. Much of what ICAT focuses on are those deadly force encounters, but it certainly translates to, I don't ever want to say a use of force is run of the mill, but you know, your takedown, you're forcing the hands behind the back. Our officers are acting appropriately. When they're not, we're going to hold them accountable for their actions.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today, Captain Lutz, and thank you for that presentation. Mike, Commander Sorensen, if you two are ready, then I will hand it off to you.
Hey, thanks, Quinn. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Thanks to Captain Lutz. We want to follow up and talk about some work we've been doing in Tempe over the last 4 years, also focused on de-escalation. And with me, I have Commander Dane Sorensen, and we're gonna tag team this a bit. So bear with us as we pass it back and forth. And I'll start off. I'll just talk a little bit about the de-escalation project, what it is, how we got started. And then we really want to focus in on the 3 parts of the project: the development of the curriculum, the delivery of the training, and then the evaluation. And what we want to do is we want to highlight the use of body-worn cameras in each of those 3 phases of the project. And to be honest, Dane and I could talk about each one of these for hours. So we're not going to do that, thankfully. But we are gonna touch on each of them. As a result, it's going to be necessarily superficial. So hopefully, when we have time for Q&A, we can get into some of the issues that you'd like to hear about that we didn't touch on. I will say that so I'll provide an overview of the project. I'll talk a little bit about curriculum development and how body cameras were used. Then I'll kick it to Commander Sorensen to talk about the training. It's here where we too have a video that we're going to show, and it's going to test my my limited technology skills to make sure that works correctly. And then Dane will kick it back to me to talk about the evaluation. So let's jump in. And so the brief overview of the project. This was a funded project. It was funded by BJA through one of the other funding programs they have, Smart Policing. And Tempe and ASU received a grant in 2017. It was a very straightforward project. Essentially, we were focused on designing, delivering, and evaluating a de-escalation training. And the Tempe PD leadership made the decision right off the bat to not take an off-the-shelf de-escalation training. And there are dozens of them out there. The captain mentioned ICAT. What Tempe wanted to do was to build their own, to develop a training that was customized for their officers, for their community. And so they took about actually 18 months to go through this curriculum building process. And I'll talk about that in a minute. The delivery of the training, Commander Sorensen is going to talk about that, a few points on that. It was delivered as part of a randomized controlled trial, so there is an evaluation, and it was squad based. So there were patrol and specialty unit squads that were randomized to get the training or not. And the video that we'll show is body cam footage that was used as part of the actual training. And then we'll also talk a bit about some of the refresher trainings that have been rolled out by Commander Sorensen's training unit. Again, body-worn camera footage is the centerpiece of that. They're done at pre-shift roll calls virtually with officer squads. The other thing you might pick up on when we talk about this is we had epically bad timing for the delivery of this training. It was in February and March of 2020. In fact, the last training session, I believe, was on March 3rd, just a couple of weeks before the global pandemic really took hold. So that has complicated the last piece that I'll talk about, which is the evaluation piece. And I'll get into that. You know, we're doing all the standard kinds of things researchers do to evaluate a training program, but here I want to highlight the use of body-worn camera footage as data, using footage to assess the impact of the training. So in terms of curriculum development, as I said, the Tempe Police Department wanted to build their own, and they spent 18 months doing that, and it really involved 2 primary activities. The first is that the department spent thousands of dollars sending their officers to different de-escalation trainings. Some were local, some were online, but most were out of state. And officers attended some of the most popular trainings, if you will. For example, PERF's ICAT training, T3. They attended trainings at other police departments. You'll hear a lot about the patrol model from LAPD. That was one of the visits that I think was most influential. And the idea was officers go attend a different training. They complete an evaluation form. They come back to the Tempe team, and we discuss the training, the curriculum, what might we want to include, what might we want to exclude in the training that we're building. The other piece, which I think is more relevant for this conversation in terms of curriculum development, was what you see at the bottom of the slide, peer nomination of top de-escalators. We as a team wanted to make sure that we, I like to use the phrase, harness local expertise. That is, we want to identify officers in the Tempe Police Department who are truly exceptional at de-escalation, and then make sure what they do is infused into this training that we're developing. So what we did early on in the project is we asked each officer to anonymously write down the names of 3 of their colleagues who they think are truly exceptional at de-escalation. And officers did that. It produced a long list of peer nominated officers. Actually, about 135 different officers received at least one nomination. We then took that list, gave that list to all the sergeants, and they produced their own top 10. Essentially, this peer nomination process led to the identification of 14 officers who were, if you will, our top de-escalators. And what we did then, we being the research team, my team, is we spent an intense 6 months with those top de-escalators. We did dozens of ride-alongs, watching them do their thing out in the field. We did one-on-one interviews with them. But what's most relevant for this webinar is the focus groups that we held. So we brought in groups of them together, 5 to 7 of them together, and we had asked them to identify footage, their own footage, that they thought might be useful to facilitate a group discussion about de-escalation. So we had in a room 5, 6, 7 of these folks, and we watched their footage, and they talked. They talked about it. They talked about what happened, what decisions they made, why they made those decisions. There was back and forth among the officers about what other things could have, what other alternatives were there. And it just led to a really fascinating conversation among these folks who are experts at this, and helped us identify a really concrete list of do's and don'ts. So the use of the footage here, I think, was critical in this curriculum development piece. I'm going to turn it over now to Commander Sorensen, who's going to talk about the actual training that was rolled out and specifically the use of body cams in that training. So Commander Sorensen.
Thank you, Dr. White. So before we can really talk about the de-escalation or use of body cams, I kind of give you a little bit of background on what we actually came up for the training and some of the important aspects of the de-escalation program. Our de-escalation program essentially has 3 pillars that we teach during a 10-hour day and then follow up through after that. Those 3 pillars are self-care, emotional intelligence, how our officers reading the room, reading people that they're responding to, calls for service, how are they reading other officers through emotional intelligence, and then the operational piece, which was a big part of the BWC use and training, is the patrol model. So the patrol model is what we call a decision-making framework for any incident, including use of force. And I'm going to give you a little background on that. So the patrol model, during any call for service, we ask that our officers utilize the patrol model, which is an acronym for planning. So the P for planning. When you get sent to a call for service, what's your plan? You should have some sort of plan in your mind as you're making your way to the call for service. When you arrive, the A is for assessment. Is what you were sent to, what you had a plan for. And if it's not, what kind of assessment are you making and what do you need to do? The T is for time. Do you have time to get distance, or do you have to react right now to what you're seeing in front of you? And the R is for redeploy. Are you in a good position? Is the suspect in a position where you can maneuver around or call in extra resources to give a position of advantage to hopefully de-escalate this call for service. The O is for other resources. In an agency like ours, we have tools. So other resources may be less lethal tools that certain officers carry. It could be drones, calling in a sister agency's helicopter unit, or it could be specialty units. Is this too much to handle for a patrol officer? Do I need to call in K9, or do I need to call in potentially a SWAT team or some sort of specialty unit that's on the street like that? And then the last piece, a very important piece, is the lines of communication. That's the L. And when we have a call for service, we instruct our officers that we are communicating with three different groups on each call. We're communicating with law enforcement, fire, everybody that's essentially on our radio system wearing a uniform. We also communicate with the suspect. Are we giving clear commands and expectations of a suspect and notifying them of the implications if they don't respond to what we're doing? And we also communicate, importantly, with the community and witnesses around. Do people know why we're there and why we're doing what we're doing? It's very important in a call for service to make sure that people understand what the police response is. So when we started this training, a big deal with the BWC portion was we had to find things within our agency where our officers were doing this already. That would help us get buy-in, especially for the operational piece. So when we first came up with our 10-hour training, we had videos where officers would use force, get ahead of a situation and potentially make it so a greater amount of force is not needed. And we also had situations where officers didn't use force because they used good tactics in the operational patrol model to basically limit what a suspect can do and to mitigate any sort of damage that could occur. We delivered that training during the 10-hour day, but then in the aftermath of that training, we started to explore different videos that were out in the world. And that's the beauty of the patrol model is I can take a video, or my training unit can take a video that is from another agency and apply the patrol model to it and either reinforce the good things that are happening or highlight things that an agency could have done better. And this particular video that you're going to see here in a minute is in coordination with a sister agency that we were using their academy, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, and in coordination with a change in our use of force policy. And we wanted to highlight the need to render aid. So we're going to apply a patrol model to an officer-involved shooting involving 2 MCSO deputies. You're not going to see the whole video, but you kind of get an idea of how we delivered these supplementary training videos every month during the testing phase or during the trial phase of the study. And we're pretty proud of it so much, and we found use in it that we even use it today. So when we have force now, our force review committee, which is independent of the chain of command, reviews all applicable force for the month for the agency. And we then go through and come up with a training video highlighting exemplary use of de-escalation and use of force and use of the patrol model to our officers in a supplementary training that goes out once a month, every month out of our force review committee. So with that, Dr. White, I think we can hit the video and give an example of what we're doing to deliver the BWC footage.
Okay, I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna fast forward. The first 3 minutes of the video are a description of the patrol model, which Commander Sorensen already went through. And then the video itself is about 5 minutes. So let's see if I can get it started.
Now watch this body cam footage of a deputy-involved shooting in Mesa and consider the patrol model.
Adam 123, go ahead.
Alright, we're positioned just a couple of houses west of. She's trying to call him to have him step out. Lies further.
10-4.
It's 5647, right?
Yeah. Is it 5647, correct?
just had somebody shoot at us.
Okay.
124 negative. We were code 4 outside. Somebody took a shot at us as we were by the house. If you can let 120 know and start Mesa.
Adam 120, 10-4. Correction. Adam 124, no. I'm sorry, sir, you're a bit muffled. This is 39 East Dodge Street. For the 666.
39, not 47.
Station is 45 for the traffic on Dodge.
I don't know. Maybe. I didn't see it. All right.
Shaw, I'm going there. Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Put your hands up!
Hey!
Put your hands up now! Put your hands up!
Drop the guns!
Put your hands
Drop the
up!
guns!
Put
1, 2,
your
3. We
hands
got
up!
subject out here with 2 handguns.
Subject outside with 2 handguns.
124 998. We have 1 down. Start medical.
Copy 998. 1 down. Starting medical.
Where's the other one at?
Right there.
Okay.
I got lethal.
Okay. First aid.
First aid
Go.
now.
Go get first aid. Okay.
Go inside. Go back inside now.
Stay with me.
Emergency traffic for District 1 for 998 and District 1 for 998.
Stay with me.
Keep your traffic to minimum.
Okay.
At 50 East Dodge Street. All units responding, acknowledge on 100. Everybody else, stay on your stations. Again, all units responding. 563 Remain on station.
One in and out.
Clear.
You got 1 straight through.
One straight through. I need gauze. Right here.
Like the 1, 2, 3, 10.
You got it? I'm gonna put this away.
Yeah.
Adam 120, I'm showing you en route. Confirm Adam 125. 10-4 also.
124. We've got one with 1 gunshot straight through. We're right in the middle of Dodge.
You have anything for his front?
Stay with me, sir.
Hey,
Subject from the residence.
stay with me.
Stay with me.
I think he's only hit the 1 time.
Yeah, that was mine.
No. Yep.
Yeah, it was
You're good. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Is everyone okay here?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Hey.
Stay with me, buddy.
That's what I'm trying to verify for Adam 123 or Adam 124.
1, 2, 3. All deputies are code 4. Only subject hit.
Overall, the deputies did a great job adapting their plans, assessing quickly, and used effective time, distance, and cover. They exercised good redeployment tactics by putting themselves in good position to neutralize the threat. They utilized other resources such as transitioning to rifles and medical supplies when rendering aid became necessary. Their communication throughout the entirety of the event was excellent. They communicated with each other well, from rapidly evolving plans to coverage for rendering aid. They kept dispatch informed and communicated effectively with the suspect and the public as well.
All right, so I'll take the third part of this. So what we talked about so far is the use of body cameras in the development of the actual curriculum, and Commander Sorensen then talking about use of body cam footage in the actual content of the of the curriculum, both in that initial 10-hour classroom session, as well as in the months that followed in the refresher trainings that, as we both suggested, were they were virtual, meaning they were done online using footage, and typically officers in the squads that were receiving the training would view these during pre-shift roll calls with the squad. So what I wanted to do now is talk about the third piece, though, which is the use of footage in the evaluation. And as I said earlier, it was a squad-based randomization. Patrol and specialty unit squads randomized to either get the training or not, about 100 officers in each group. And for the research piece, obviously, then what we're doing is we're comparing the outcomes among those two officer groups, those that got the training and those that didn't. And we're doing all the typical stuff, as I said before, surveys of officers, looking at the administrative data. We talked to hundreds of citizens who had interactions with officers, but really what I want to do here with our remaining time is highlight the value of body-worn camera footage as data, as an evaluation tool. And I'm going to talk about how we used footage in two different ways. And coincidentally enough, Quinn Patterson, who's moderating this, is the one who probably coded the most of this body cam footage, so he can offer his thoughts in the Q&A perhaps. So the first way we did this was simply through random review. And we did this before the training was rolled out as well as after. Each week we would randomly select 5 officers that were in the train group and 5 officers that were not. And then we would go into evidence.com, they're an Axon user. And for each of those officers, we'd randomly select a video that had been uploaded within the last 7 days. So random selection each week of officers, and then random selection of a video from those officers. And then we watch it. And like I said, Quinn did the majority of this. We developed a coding instrument that captured just a ton of detail in what was happening during these encounters. More than 140 variables, aspects of the call, what the citizen said and did, what the officer said and did, procedural justice kinds of things, the outcome, and obviously a big focus on the use of de-escalation tactics, particularly those that were covered in the training. And so what we're doing then is we compare the encounters among trained officers versus those that didn't get the training. So, and we've done this, and what you're seeing on this slide are some statistically significant differences we've identified comparing those two officer groups after the training. And these, I think, are really important differences. So for example, trained patrol officers were significantly less likely to use a condescending or patronizing tone. Were significantly more likely to try to build rapport with the citizen, less likely to fail to transfer control to another officer if necessary. They were less likely to use charged or imposing body language, and they were more likely to resolve the encounter informally, especially by not issuing a ticket. So, this is a level of detail and nuance that we would not have captured any other way except through review of body cam footage. So that was the kind of random review that we were doing. We also did review of body cam footage of all use of force encounters. And we did this again before and after the training, capturing a ton of information for each of those incidents. And I can tell you that this part of the evaluation is ongoing. I was looking at data before I even got on this webinar. So this piece is still, as I said, still digging deep in the data. One of the things that has emerged that I think is really significant is citizen injuries. It's an outcome we're looking at. Again, these are use of force encounters, and these are encounters that occurred after the training. And what we're seeing is that citizens who have use of force encounters with officers who received the training are significantly less likely to be injured during that use of force encounter compared to officers who did not get that training. So I think a really, really important outcome there. And like I said, we're doing a ton of other stuff, but I think the body cam footage has really been critical to the evaluation. So I know we're running short on time. We want to have an opportunity to answer any questions you might have, but just to sum things up, as I said, there are three big parts to this project. The development of the curriculum, because they wanted to build their own, the training itself, and then the evaluation. And body-worn cameras have been critical to each of those phases in the curriculum development, working with those top de-escalators, using their own footage to facilitate a dialogue with others who are experts at this about what happened, what worked, what didn't, what else could have been done. In the training, the actual training, you saw the video that we used. The roll call and virtual trainings done after the fact were very similar, and just as a way to demonstrate exceptional tactics, poor tactics, everything in between, and then reinforcing some of those principles of the training, in the months that followed. And then last, the evaluation. I knew going into this that the administrative data, use of force, complaints was not going to be a good way to assess the impact of this training. I worked with the Tempe Police Department for years. They're exceptionally professional. All the right accountability mechanisms in place. Commander Sorensen talked about the Force Review Committee. They don't have a lot of use of force. They don't have problems. So I knew that, or at least I thought that those administrative data on use of force and those kinds of things were quite frankly going to be too blunt to measure the impact of this training. So we needed to figure out a much more detailed, nuanced way to do that. And the body cam footage was, I think it was the way that we were able, and you can see from some of the findings that, that we're documenting the dynamics of police-citizen encounters, and we're able to, at a very, very nuanced level, to identify differences in officers based on whether they got the training or not. And like I said on the slide here, it takes that question of did the training work to a whole another level. So I think we are out of time. I'm going to unshare my screen, and Commander Sorensen and I can answer any questions you might have about the project.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, John.
Yeah, this is John Markovic, and I'm a senior policy advisor at BJA, and I run the body-worn camera program. So thanks for the great presentation, Captain Lutz, Commander Sorensen, and Mike sharing the research. So I was wondering when I was listening, we talked a lot about use of force in critical incidents, de-escalation, the patrol model. I think it, shown to be impactful. I think a good research base is being established. I wondered if you've extended this beyond critical incidents and have looked at and reviewed body-worn camera footage on more routine encounters, let's say traffic stops or approaching a group for a potential field interview, and how some of these tactics might be applied and how agencies might learn from just sort of more mundane things. And maybe showcasing officers who are particularly good at building rapport, who might walk up to a group of youth, kind of menacing looking on a corner and approach them in a way that's non-threatening. That's just one example. I wonder, just generally, is this type of learning review being used for more routine, mundane types of events?
I'll say one thing before I turn it over to Commander Sorensen. John, your point is an excellent one, and that's why for the evaluation we were looking at footage in two ways: doing the random reviews every week, selecting officers randomly and selecting their videos randomly. Our intent there was to capture not the critical incidents, but just the more routine, everyday kind of encounters officers might be having, and then look in a very, very detailed kind of way at how they're handling those encounters. And Commander Sorensen, probably you can speak in greater detail about the departmental reviews.
So we don't go looking for each piece of body cam footage and what officers are doing, but what you are talking about with the nuanced, what's happening in just regular encounters, a lot of times on our force review committee, if we have a use of force that occurs on a call for service, and let's just say it was a party call, there's probably 4 or 5 officers with a large ASU party, a couple hundred people. We watch every piece of that footage, and we do find within those pieces of footage where people are using the tactics that we and the training we have put out, and they've done a good job. and you may still have a use of force somewhere else in the call for service, but we are seeing that, and we do highlight those things and reach out to officers and to supervisors when we're seeing those things appropriately used and highlighting them. If that answers your question, sir.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I would add to that, Commander Sorensen suggested that ASU students have parties, and I don't believe that to be the case. Kidding. I did see one question
Speaking from
about
experience. I can say no.
Yeah, I did see a question about whether these results are available. A couple of things. We have an article coming out in policeone.com in the next days or weeks, and so certainly keep an eye on that. That provides some, I think, some more meat to the bones of the project. And then the ASU research team, we published several articles on this project, and my email is available, and I can send those to you. We can make those available on the TTA website as well.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, Mike, your My publication on the civilizing effect of BWCs on citizens, that is available on the BWC TTA website for anybody that's interested. Do we have any other questions from any of the other attendees? All right, well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to pass it off to John Markovic. So Mike, Commander Sorensen, thank you for your time. Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks, Quinn. I sort of inserted my question there as a bit of a closing comment, but thank you, Captain Lutz. Thank you, Commander Sorensen, Mike, Chip, and the team for putting this together. I think this is showing well what can be done with body-worn camera footage. And I think, these are good examples of how we can leverage it for training purposes. I think one of the other areas of interest that we have on the body-worn camera program is really looking at sort of innovative ways that individual officers are leveraging the fact that they're recording incidents. So, some of the things that we've seen, I think it was a video a while ago out of Wisconsin. It wasn't Madison, it was somewhere nearby there, where officer was just routinely, every time he was doing something like a traffic stop, he would narrate what he's doing and why he's doing it. And I think we also are interested in learning what officers are doing to sort of learn from others and learn from the exemplars on how to collect evidence or do field interviews. So, I'd be interested in any feedback on things that are being done in Tempe or Camden in that respect, or anybody else who's on the call who might have some feedback on that. Because I think these body-worn cameras have a tremendous amount of ability to showcase what officers are doing correctly, not just catching them doing bad stuff, or even correcting them and training in a sort of non-punitive way that Captain Lutz referred to. I think there's a lot of opportunities to showcase the many times that officers do things well. So I hope we continue to sort of focus on that and think of ways that we can take advantage of that. Chip, I'll turn it over to you maybe for some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, John. Just a couple quick thoughts. Number one, very thankful and grateful for presenters from Tempe and Camden. I think we heard what we wanted to hear, and we got what we wanted to get out of this thing in terms of the ways that body-worn camera footage can and are being used to facilitate training in a number of different ways. So that's just important. I'm thinking back, and Mike, you'll appreciate this, to when we first got involved in some of this work and we started to look at training issues with body-worn cameras, and it became very clear to us that across the board in the field of policing, there's very little formal evaluation of training curriculum. And to have two projects, I know the PERF curriculum was also subject to a pretty rigorous evaluation design, as was the Tempe. And so I'm just pleased and kind of proud of the fact that we are bringing this to the field as well, that we're bringing this type of rigor and this close look at the effectiveness of training. And again, capitalizing on the fact that we have body-worn camera footage to help us with that. So that to me was just a kind of a cool outcome. of all this work. I appreciate it. I think that's it, everybody. Thank you again, Quinn, for running this thing and for the work that you did on this project before you came to CNA. Nice going. Rachel and Carrie, thank you. John, thank you again. Dane and Mike, nice work. Take care, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.